So Iron Hans, has helped the boy. I mean, it's a funny kind of thing because there's a temptation to start calling the boy Iron John. Maybe he's Iron John and that was Iron Hans before. But Iron Hans so far represents the higher self or the cosmic self or the energetic self or the, like even the materialist says you die and energy doesn't die, it goes on. So even the materialist thinks that. So I'm saying that the mind and the heart goes on too, but the idea that the energy goes on is that the energy is huge. And so Iron John is this cosmic primordial energy that comes out of the last 3 Earths, and we're in the fourth in real life. But here, the boy has become a strange knight, and the knight has to serve a higher self. And the daughter of the king wants to know who the knight is. If you remember the story from before, I'm continuing because I don't want to have to recapitulate right at the moment. So the daughter of the king is inquiring who this gardener boy is, who came up from, who hit his higher octave at 8 years old. And then in teenage years and young adulthood, got this relationship with the wild man. And if you're following me, his higher self and wild self, like in feminist Jungian psychology, women who run with the wolves, is how do you get in touch with the animal, the animating principle of the anima animus, the inner counter-sexuality. It's way more than that, though, because it's really the etheric, and then the astral has the duality existing in it of light and dark and good and bad, and the trinity that comes about. It's always a trinity when you're getting initiated. The duality is always at war, and the oneness creates an ineptitude and inept inertia eventually, or another war. I'm one, but I'm not one, and it's this harmony of the inner and outer. And finding this fourth way, the physical, etheric, astral, and the ego. That's everything, nothing, in a mind. And this reincarnating soul gets in touch with the higher trinity of Atma, Buddha, Manas. Spirit human, spirit man or self, and Buddha, life spirit, and spirit self, Manas. So back to the story. The boy has made himself into a knight that can magically transform into a knight with soldiers and then disappear back into being the cook gardener boy trying to be a knight with a hobbity three-legged horse. And other people mock him. Here comes our hobbity jig back again. They asked too, under what hedge have you been lying, sleeping all the time? He said, I did my best, but it would have gone badly without me. And then he was still more ridiculed. Everybody thinks you're in imaginary spiritual warfare. The king said to his daughter, I will proclaim a great feast that shall last for 3 days, and you shall throw a golden apple. Now, it's interesting that the winter solstice and the summer solstice and the equinoxes, there's this 3-day period. Jesus dies and goes to hell for 3 days. The descent into the underworld is a 3-day thing, but I'm getting lost. Let's just keep to the story and try to stick to the story, and then we'll come back to interpreting it as adults of how we're going through this process too. The king proclaims a 3-day feast, and he tells the princess that his daughter, you should throw a golden apple out. So in other words, the spiritual self, the higher self, is going to throw the gold. Perhaps the unknown man will show himself. Again, the unknown man, the unknown friend, is our higher self that at first hasn't come to light and it looks dark or unknown. Perhaps the unknown man will show himself. When the feast was announced, the youth went out to the forest and called Iron Hans. You go to your wilderness area again, outwardly and inwardly. What do you desire, asked he. That I shall catch the king's daughter's golden apple. It is as safe as if you had it already. So in other words, when we do our homework and we want these higher desires, we're safe. And it's already happening, but it hasn't happened yet. It is as safe as if you had it already, Iron Hans, the wild man, says to the young boy becoming a man. And becoming a spiritual man is what's up. You shall likewise have a suit of red armor for the occasion and ride on a spirited chestnut horse. So we go into different colored horse. And this is this really reminds you of Parsifal in the Holy Grail too, by the way, but that's another story. When the day came, the youth galloped to the spot, took his place amongst the knights, and was recognized as a no one. When you have the emptiness practice, you're no one, right? You're everyone and no one. And the inner space, the inner silence, has room for new things to come in. The king's daughter came forward and threw a golden apple to the knights, but none of them caught it. But he, only as soon as he had it, he galloped away. On the second day, Iron Hans equipped him as a white knight. So the black, red, and white knight. In alchemy, you come from the darkness and into the fire, and the fire burns you into immortality. You can't lose your true self. And then the white light comes, but it looks like a white ash if you're identified with what burnt. Anyway, that's another story. On the second day, Iron Hans equipped him as a white knight and gave him a white horse. Oh, so was it the red horse here? The red horse first and then the white knight. So it's the fire and then it's the light that comes. Yeah, and then the black is the spiritual darkness. Anyway, I'm jumping in my own mind here. I'm getting lost. So let's keep to the story. On the second day, Iron Hans equips him with a white knight and gave him a white horse. And again, he was the only one who caught the apple, and he did not linger an instant, but galloped off with it. The king grew angry and said, "That is not allowed. He must appear before me and tell his name." He gave the order that if the white knight who caught the apple should go away again, they should pursue him, and if he would not come back willingly, they were to cut him down and stab him. On the third day, he received from Iron Hans a suit of black armor. Red, white, black. Fire, light, and spiritual darkness, which is really a higher form. It's like here we're going from the fire of the world into the light. We go, into like from the moon to the sun and back into Saturn evolution. The higher trinity that transforms our lower self. Anyway, I'm jumping and I'm trying to interpret it for those of you who need it, because it gets pretty thick here. On the third day, he received from Iron Hans a suit of black armor and a black horse. And again, he caught the apple, the third apple. But when he was riding off with it, the king's attendants pursued him, and one of them got so near him that he wounded the youth's leg with the point of a sword. The youth nevertheless escaped from them, but his horse leapt so violently that the helmet fell off the youth's head, and they could see that he had golden hair. He rode back and announced this to the king. So you can see, we can see a lot of times on the third day or the third step of initiation, the fourth way starts to be known, but isn't completed yet, and we're continually going on. The following day, the king's daughter asked the gardener about his boy. He is at work in the garden. The queer creature has been at the festival too, and only came home yesterday evening. He has likewise shown my children 3 golden apples, which he has won. The king had him summoned into his presence, and he came and again had his little cap on his head. But the king's daughter went up to him and took it off, and then his golden hair fell down over his shoulders. And he was so handsome that all were amazed. Are you the knight who came every day to the festival, and always in different colors, and who caught the 3 golden apples? Asked the king. Yes, he answered he. And here the apples are. So, see, we return the gold money to the people who are poorer than us, but the golden apples that come from Spirit, we return to Spirit. That's what the message is here. And he took them out of his pocket and returned them to the king. If you desire further proof, you may see the wound which your people gave me when they followed me. And again, in a lot of spiritual stories, as we become spiritual, we often get wounded physically or mentally or emotionally, but we keep surviving. And the wound becomes the womb of the second birth in Jungian psychology. But that really takes place in our deeper heart. So the boy man says, but I am likewise the knight who helped you to your victory over your enemies. If you can perform such deeds as that, you are no gardener's boy. Tell me, who is your father? So here's where the boy is becoming a man and says that if you can do the warring and the cooking and the gardening and the return of the golden apples that you gained, that you're no longer a gardener's boy. Tell me, who is your father? My father is a mighty king, and gold have I in plenty as great as I require. I well see, said the king, that I owe thanks to you. Can I do anything to please you? Yes, answered he, that indeed you can. Give me your daughter to wife. In other words, give the daughter, who's a daughter, turn her into a wife. That either he's going to do or they're both going to do it, and everything's going to do it. The maiden laughed. I think part of the secret here is that the king's daughter or the king's son, if you're a woman, has to has to give up the apples. You have to throw the apples away. You give up the golden coins from the spiritual world, but you have to give what you think are your spirit, soul, body, the 3 golden apples of your higher self, the Atma Buddha Manas. You have to give them up to the aspiring lower self that's coming up in yourself and in others, and that you get to this place of the alchemical marriage. And we're at this really magical point here. So here's where there's no more hiding the gold, and that we have to share our spiritual thinking, and that we've proven ourselves by fighting off the enemy. The enemy can be hunger, thirst, poverty, addictions. It can be lack of talent and job and money, lack of home or care, health problems, relationship problems, children problems, career problems, friends problems, asylum or prison. It can be a lot of things that jail us, besides the physical jail, habits. And so the boy has proven himself that he can serve higher calling, and he can serve the ground up, and he can fight for what's right, and he can win the golden apples. He can win the wisdom, love, and will, the love, light, and life. You can win the Atma Buddha Manas, the universal mind that comprehends universal love and truth. And so this is where the prodigal son wakes up eating in the animal nature of the pig's sty, And the prodigal son says, I'm the son of a king, I can go home. And on the way home, he meets the king and the father halfway. That's where we meet in the heart. We meet the father and the mother principle in the heart. We're returning home. And our mind is virtue trained. So the outer king of the world says he owes him thanks, and can he do anything? And he says, yes, I want you, give me your daughter to wife, which is another process. And so this is where we've grown through the physical, emotional, mental, the physical, etheric, astral, and we've developed an ego to deal with everything and nothing. And we have a mind. And our mind wants to marry the Buddhic principle of the divine feminine. Again, if you're a woman, you have... I'm reading this because this is like a really heavy story that the men's groups used to use in the 80s and 90s and still do. But I think we can understand it as for men or women, and it's an initiation story that needs Buddhism and Theosophy and Rosicrucian wisdom and Steiner and Osho and Blavatsky, and it needs like yoga. It needs some kind of spiritual insight that we're not just trying to get psychically inflated with knowledge and power, and we're not trying to like create a new religion or fall into a religion where we just have blind belief. We're trying to empower ourselves in thinking, feeling, and willing, in physical, emotional, mental, that we can awaken a higher love for truth and an all-American, universal, planetary body and consciousness. We can make a bridge to each other and be friends. And we can marry our highest truth and our highest ideal. And that's what when the boy man asks for, give me your daughter to wife, to the king, the maiden laughs and says, he does not stand much on ceremony, but I have already seen by his golden hair that he was no gardener's boy. And then she went and kissed him. So you don't just look at golden hair. It's not a physical thing. It's looking at the wisdom of experience and the wisdom of insight and the wealth, the inner wealth. And so he does not stand in much ceremony, that he doesn't do the rituals of the outer world, but she can see by his goldenness of light, life, and love that he's no simple gardener's boy. And so she kisses him. And this is where we're kissed with divine inspiration and spark and imagination and intuition, right? His father and mother came to the wedding and were in great delight, for they had given up all hope of ever seeing their dear son again. So this is where he returns to these two worlds meet. And as they were sitting at the marriage feast, the music suddenly stopped. The doors opened, and a stately king came in with a great retinue. He went up to the youth, embraced him, and said, I am Iron Hans, but was by enchantment a wild man. But you have set me free. All the treasures which I possess shall be your property. So here is like a third king. Iron Hans, the wild man, was the spirit of the world, the king of the world, that had been imprisoned in the elemental forces. And so by freeing the inner and outer truth, love, and mind in action, and marrying the inner and outer, heaven and earth, that this really true wildness that we see in war and violence and non-virtuous action, nature catastrophe, man-made war machines, pollution, all that crazy stuff. We have a wild man that's been caged and wanting to get out and has gotten out in the wrong way. And we all need to learn from the fairy tale. Like all initiation religions are fairy tales. until we can awaken them in our spiritual imagination. And so we've traveled from this idea that there's something wild that's eating the king's men and making people disappear. Things disappear and we never see them again. They die or go away. And so we had that first step of initiation, and where the unknown person, the unawakened spiritual self, comes and drains the pool that sees the dog of the lower mind. And we find the wild man. Somehow we discover, when we get over our taking it personally, and we discover that there's, behind all the craziness and wildness, is a wild man of spiritual reality. But it's too wild and not tamed, and so we decide to go with it. After we're playing with a golden ball, but we're just playing. We're not taking spirituality seriously. And the ball goes into the cage of the wild man. It goes into the inner self of the wild cosmic containment. Our affinity to infinity, our cosmic consciousness that could overwhelm us with a St. Paul experience of being hit by lightning and knocked off our horse. How do we get back on the horse? And the horse has been wounded and lame. All these myths come together in any one myth. That's good. And we find the wild man, Iron Jean, and it's in the Secret Doctrine and Isis Unveiled and the Key to Theosophy. It's in all Rudolf Steiner's early works, Foundation Stone Meditation. It's there. That fourth way of working through the energies of the Father, the Saturn evolution, and the Sun, the light that comes, spiritual insight, being in harmony with nature. Our personal desires come and wreck stuff and have great moments too of insight, enlightenment, and love, and education and nourishment. And then we plop on the earth, and we've lost the true spirit soul body. We experience death and illness and suffering and sickness, and we don't know what to do, and how can we help this poor world? And we get crucified in space and time. The four elements of fire, earth, air, and water, the physical, emotional, mental, and the ego that's on fire, but we don't have the divine fire. We have anger and desire, and we can never get enough. And then we practice emptiness at the center of the cross of the four elements, the circle and cross. And we awaken this three and fourfoldness of the triangle and square in sacred geometry. We hit our higher octave of 8, the fool's cap. And we find that balance between the upper and lower circle. We find that point at the infinity symbol. We play with the golden ball. The three goddesses, who's the most beautiful, who can catch the golden ball? And there's the War of Troy and the Iliad. There's then the two parts go into the Odyssey of going home. Faust, Goethe's Faust. Faust loses himself and tries to recover land from the sea for the poor. And he returns his return journey, the second half of Faust, where the spiritual soul is redeemed and goes into the heaven realm. It's a really miracle, and it's miraculous that we can come to spiritual teachings, whether they're the Course in Miracles, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita by Judge that Gandhi used, Martin Luther King read, that and the Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. Einstein read it. I know Bobby Kennedy was versed in the Greek myths. It wouldn't surprise me if he read these same spiritual teachings, try to become a spiritual warrior. And that's what we're doing. We're letting the wild man out. We're running with the wolves. We're trying to ride the energy rather than get driven and beat up by it. We dip ourselves into the deeper well of spiritual wisdom in the earth, and we get hurt and die from to the past, but we learn about the gold, the wisdom of the golden wisdom that comes only through time. And then we return. We return and we find out that there's a war going on. We become a young adult and there's a war going on. And how do we use our universal mind, love, and truth, our Atma Buddha Manas? How do we use the little wisdom that's broken, that still is in our physical, emotional, mental, in our thinking, feeling, and willing? This is all talked about in Rudolf Steiner's Theosophy. It's talked about in The Voice of the Silence, the 2 paths and the 7 portals of The Voice of Silence by Blavatsky, the 3 chapters, the 3 steps of initiation, and a 4th that comes into a certain sevenfoldness and a transformation of death into immortality and virtue mind training. I know I'm saying a lot, but this is a different language that talks about the golden possibility of each one of us awakening to a higher self and activating our higher self in everyday experience. We free we get the key to the cage of our wildness from the great goddess, our mother's mother's mother of compassion. But we need to seek the world and have compassion and truth. And so we go with the wild man. We touch the gold. Little by little, we turn into gold. And we take that gold with us. Our golden insights and learning from spiritual things, where our head learned, but our heart and our hand hasn't got it yet. And we go back and our hands on and we go to war. We catch golden we get the golden, we make money that's golden by doing good things. We're not doing bad things to hurt the earth to make money. We're doing good things. But we pass on that money to help people who are poorer than us. And we eventually, from the gold coins and winning the battle by doing virtuous deeds, we finally court spiritual wisdom, our highest self. We court the Buddhic nature that is the container for Atma. Again, you have to read Key to Theosophy by Blavatsky and her Isis Unveiled and Secret Doctrine to really get this. And then in the story Iron Dzyan, the stanzas of Dzyan are Blavatsky's, stanzas of ancient Senzar, the language is Senzar, pre-Tibetan, Chaldean, Babylonian, Persian, India, Atlantean wisdom. And she writes the Secret Doctrine based on that. And so we get to Iron Dzyan. The Gospel of John has it. You can see Rudolf Steiner's Gospel of John and its relationship to the other Gospels. And you get this idea of 3 Gospels with this 4th one that carries us further. And in this story, he gets the 3 apples, the golden apples, and he returns them to the spirit. It's amazing. And after the story ends, it's even more amazing because heaven and earth join, and we get our soulmate, and we unify the diverse, broken off kings of the world, and the wildest elements of the earth come back and join us. And so it's like a triple crowning, a triple king, triple queen, and the wild man becomes our best friend of cosmic energy, the cosmic fire. You think of like the Cosmic Fire book. by Alice Bailey. Wow. So I want to share a meditation with you. We can meditate on this whole fairy tale that people keep losing themselves in the world. And there's a fourth one who's unknown to us that can empty the waters of samsara. They're taking it emotionally, getting emotional over everything without any creative spiritual imagination, inspiration, or true intuition. So here's a meditation for you. May my body, speech, and mind be transformed by the holy oneness, by the holy spiritual teachings, and the holy spiritual community of enlightened beings and those who seek enlightenment. This is me, and I am that. Om Tat Sat. I am that. Om Tat Sat. Om, my higher self. Mane Padme Hum. Om, my higher self, transforms my thinking, feeling, and willing into holy stillness, still learning, an open heart Grail cup that can hold and discern truth and higher learning. And the will to be still and know, be still and grow, be still and sow the seeds of enlightenment by awakening the 7 virtues that awaken the 7 chakras and guard them until they can be spent. There's 3 chakras above your heart and 3 below, and the higher 3 transform the lower 3. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om is the Christ or God or the spiritual teacher, the Buddha, over your head. Om. Mane. Just take a breath in and imagine your head is receiving instruction. Instruct. To be instruct by the lightning revelation. Light. Instruct. Om Mane. And Padme is the illumination doesn't rush out and do something. It goes to your heart. Om Mane Padme. And my heart, whom flowers in virtuous action. To clean my house, make a little sacred space in my house for meditation, a little altar, to clean the kitchen and bathroom, to have a little garden, to listen to others in my stillness, in my wish for enlightenment for myself and everyone, to be able to listen, to be able to have divination, to divine the divine in another, and be patient to nourish that higher self in another person and not to nourish their lower self, their lower self. So this is a little introduction where we can ponder this mystery that somewhere, everywhere, we're exactly at the right place. Everything is perfect for us to get enlightenment. We can imagine being in a better place, but every place is perfect, that if we could just hold still, we could see the learning lesson. And we can see the gold that we can encourage. So the first thing in the morning, I'll just take a deep breath and sit up and go back into meditation and try to see if I can be so still I can remember the spiritual experience of sleep. Every night I go to sleep Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. I wish that I could get enlightened so I could help all those who suffer. And every night I go to sleep, I offer myself up to the angel and to the Holy Spirit, that I can go to night school, or that I could completely rest so I'll be ready for the next day to help the world be a better place to go and stay. It's really helpful to do some kind of prayer or mantra. I mean, the Our Father prayer is like the Bhagavad Gita. It's something that's really holy, that's been transformed from way in the past. Like the Sermon on the Mount is true Christianity, you might say. But Hermes Pymander, the Good Shepherd, Hermes is known as the Good Shepherd. 3 wise men follow a star. The 3 wise men are the 3 stooges, are the idiots. The 3 musketeers are the mental, fighting, quarreling for truth and love. But the 3 wise men follow the star, the 4th way, over the birthplace of the heart, soul, womb of the great goddess. And we birth the Christos, or our higher self. And the Our Father points this way. Hermes, 3 wise men follow the star of the Virgin Isis, gives birth to Hermes, known as the Good Shepherd, goes to the temple at 12, writes the Sermon on the Mount where virtue overcomes non-virtue. By creating what it is and what's right, we transform the negative. By just fighting the negative all the time, we're indulging that it exists. And again, we need good cops, we need good police officers, we need good soldiers, we need to fight for truth in America, justice, justice in the American way, like Superman. And yeah, we need that. But we need also a planetary citizen that can bring world peace. And the ideals that America first had, we need to re-invoke those, that we can be we can be examples of virtue for the whole world that wants to emulate us, and we can have a true democracy and co-creative freedom, co-creative peace, co-creative working to heal what's gone wrong. My friend Marianne Williamson, she's doing her part, trying to run for president. I don't agree with everything she says. We don't have to agree with everything she says. But if we don't address what she says and have the conversation, what I'm trying to do, and what I presented in my book, Astrological Aspects, the Art, was that I was trying to create a new conversation about spirituality. Spirituality isn't here so you can have all the money in the world and get laid. Spirituality isn't here so that we can become little kings and queens over our little fort. When we die, look what we can't take with us. When we die, the light in our thinking, the breath in our heart, the warmth in the fire of our belly, the warmth, the fire in the belly and the fire in our love, and the warmth in that goes into the heart and fires up the spiritual thinking in light of our head, the fire of our virtuous deeds and the fire of our love goes into it rises at death and goes through the cup of the heart and empties into the thinking, the spiritual thinking that directs our future bardo between death and rebirth and our reincarnation. So in the divine Pymander, the Father's the oneness and primordial darkness, and then you have the birth of the light and the sun, and then you have the world soul animating your deep virtuous deeds. That's another way to go, and the Sermon on the Mount is the transformation of virtue into non-virtue. When it comes to the Our Father, which could be as old as the Bhagavad Gita and the voice of the silence, in the stanzas of Dzyan that Blavatsky talks about, Rudolf Steiner's foundation of esotericism, is his commentaries on Blavatsky's esoteric school of theosophy, which only had 3 degrees. In the first one, you had to be quiet and listen. In the second one, you could talk. In the third one, you became an active ingredient. So in Iron John, the 3 has become like, 3 journeys of involution and evolution. And the 7th principle is when you're fully activated, where you're a world citizen, and we have spirit, soul, body operating on this earth as the three kings. There's a lot to get here, and you can read The Chemical Wedding and the 7 days of that, and you get the same kind of story. You can read Parsifal by Eschenbach, and the French one I like a lot, Cretin de Troyes one, and you can get the same story. Hansel and Gretel is the same story in a way, where you're transforming the wild beast, that's the witch in us, and the red wolf is like the drug addictions and the bad guy monster that's going to eat us up. Yeah, so hang in there. So yeah, I had to let my dog back in here and out, and so I'm back. I want to talk about the Our Father, as a mystery school, initiatory, Kabbalistic thing, and I talk about it in my book, Hermetic, Rosicrucian, Grail, Tarot, and I think I talk about it too in the astrology, Astrological Aspects of the Art, the other book, which both need editing, but are a great gold mine of nuggets of gold all over the place. So, Our Father who art in heaven. Our Father is everybody's Father. Like we have one Father. All humanity and the earth have one Father. You can call it God or the Father or the universal space that birthed this. Call it what you like. Our Father, whose art is in heaven. So you start right at the top, like making a triangle, Our Father, and then you go to the right and then the left, forming a triangle. You go down to the right and to the left, and you have like Our Father, who art in heaven. And, in the tarot cards in my book, this is the Fool and the Magician and the High Priestess, right? You go, Our Father, who art in heaven, the art of as above, so below, and the Magician. So in the tarot cards, so I'm jumping here. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That's Dath in the Kabbalah. That's the eternity of knowledge. It's not death in a men's club. It's the feminine wisdom of God. It's Sophia and the High Empress. And then on the way back, it's the way down, it's like when you take the Our Father and you go all the way down, you can later go back up the tree of life in the Kabbalah. And so what connects the higher triangle and the lower seven, the upper three, that becomes 6 with a 7th principle in the center, the interlaced triangles. If you're following me, this is like Pythagorean tenfoldness. It's the Kabbalah. It's the secret of the Sefer Yetzirah in the Chaldean Babylonian Book of Numbers. And Pythagoreans, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 to make that triangle, 1, then goes downward 2, 3, the fourth earth. It's a whole system of spiritual cultural history, as well as a descent of the spiritual soul and a reascent. We descend into matter till we're 30 to 42 years old, and then we reascend. I'm giving a lot. I'm the way I talk is really that you did some homework or you're going to do homework. And if you did a lot of homework and you studied theosophy and anthroposophy and Blavatsky, Steiner, and Tibetan Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism has the 7, like in the voice of the silence. The six virtues are capped with an emptiness practice. You have like prajna, the grasp of understanding, but the virtues become like Blavatsky says we were never meant to be denser than the fragrance of a flower. And so we've like come into this incarnation into matter, and then we experience this Golgotha experience that Blavatsky talks about, and then Steiner makes a big thing of the mystery of Golgotha, which is the turning point in time. And Steiner's foundation stone, he goes to the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and then we have this turning point of where the 3 shepherds and the 3 musketeers, the 3 wise men, join up to follow the star, and we have the heart that awakens in the mind to ascend into the higher self, the powwow or the powwow of the Native American Indian and the powwow of the Tibetan Buddhist. So the Our Father, let's go back to that. You can always ask me questions about things I didn't complete because we don't have time. But I started the knowledge of the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name is the silence and emptiness wisdom of the great goddess in Thoth. Infinite wisdom, not just infinite knowledge and facts and artificial intelligence. And then we go to like the lower seven. You know, we go to the king, the emperor in tarot cards. We go to number 4, like, you know, we go 0, 1, 2, 3. That's 4 steps. So the 5th step is number 4 tarot card. And it's the emperor in a way. And so, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. We go into the 7-fold manifestation of the 7 notes of music and the 7 colors and the 7 stone, you know, alchemy. It's like really beautiful. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done to the left. Then Tippereth, the heart sun of the lovers and the devil card, like involution and evolution and spiritual and material meet in the heart. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, you know, descending down and to the right and left, then to the left. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Is that Yesod, the moon, you know, before we incarnate all the way into physical. You know, protect us from evil, which is live backwards. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory. And that's where I talk about in my book, the kingdom, power, and glory. The kingdom is the circle and the cross, where we bloom the rose in the center of our heart. The cross, the fourfoldness in the circle, and the point at the center. 4, 5, 6, you know. And then we ascend, for that is the kingdom, and the power is in the interlaced triangles with that 7th principle of the silent center that awakens Sophia, the great goddess, and it awakens the Christ in us, or the Christos, or the Krishna. The Christos, it awakens the higher self. There's a wonderful esoteric character in the Gospels by Blavatsky, and her writing on John and his Gospel and its importance, very helpful to the Solar Logos, the awakening. I'm probably saying too much, but the kingdom, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, is the higher triad, Atma Buddha Manas, that we capture. These are the 3 kings, you might say, in Iron Hans. So I've spoke too much. Omane Padme Hum. May everything that I shared with you in this fairy tale lead you to the fairy tale imagination of your life and lead you to stop your mind and think and awaken the higher self, to initiate all your dumb illusory delusions in mind into the truth, the conscious awareness of a workable truth and love and mercy and forgiveness. For means future, and to give yourself to the future is to forgive. You don't just go back and repeat performance and repeat offenders and always harp on the woundology psychology and always be wounded forever, you know? That's not it. I mean, you can do it as long as you want, but I mean, at some point, our higher self transforms the lower self, and so all of us need to do a little more homework. All of us need to look at not criticizing, but to ponder the mystery of what I tried to share and what all these beautiful people are trying to share and what Yogananda, Vivekananda, Ramakrishna are trying to share, and Sankarya, you know, the Dhammapada, what are they sharing? What's going on? So I love you more than you love yourself unless you have this spiritual knowledge. And I pray and meditate in my actions and my virtues and my silence, that we may all find peace and enlightenment. Omane Padme Hum. This is Robert of MayflowerBookshop.com at your higher self service. I'll see you on the turn.